Recording in progress.
Hey everybody, happy Monday.
Chris.
Thanks for coming in. All right, we're gonna jump into it. I'll just give you guys a quick preface. I shared with you the PDF of what we'll be covering today. So the idea of selling without selling. Um, yeah, and I'll as I walk through some of the slides, I'll also add notes to it, but I'll also just share like specific use cases in which some of these practical advice I've seen work well. More than anything, really just kind of like I want you guys to try to frame it in your mind a little bit differently in terms of like how to position yourselves when you're trying to sell. Yeah, I think that's just the main takeaway. So we'll go through that for 30 minutes and then we'll jump into questions. Um, selling is I'm also kind of like gonna just preface this is like this is applicable across any channel, right? So like whether it's from ads to email exchanges to demos to customer conversations, onboarding, um, direct sales, in person conferences. The way that you kind of like should be thinking about it is under this overarching philosophy. So um, and if you have any like specific questions around how to handle any of those use cases directly, let me know. But we'll go through it. I know Chris shared in the WhatsApp group just a few questions around referrals framework. Um, how to ask for referrals, framework for discovery questions, and then how to do the giveaways in exchange for something in return. So I'll kind of run through what those might look like, and I'll share a few examples of that potentially. So I'll jump into it. Give me 1 second. All right, most of you guys should already have this. Okay. So sell without selling, it took a long time for me to kind of wrap my head around this too. And I think like um although I think, all this also stems back to my personal relationship with selling, and I think it's going to be different for everybody. So I'll just share with you some of the context from my experiences as to like how, how I figured it out or like how I figured out my own version of it. So I spent I've had many different previous like chapters in my career. I think a lot of entrepreneurs do. And one of those chapters was working in TV and film production. And I was never really successful at it, but I spent like 7 or 8 years in my 20s in that world. And I remember like, just how to position pitches for different executives. And again, this is like 15, maybe 20 years, yeah, 20 years ago, Jesus Christ, 20 some years ago, at this point, right? So keep that also in mind. But like, this is a time where, you did have quite a bit of access if you knew how to, like, this is the point where email is still relatively new. So if you knew how to like wield the power of words, you could probably get in front of some executive at some studio, if you could be a master of words. And so I wasn't great at that at the very beginning, but ultimately I figured out how to do that in order for me to just break in and get the attention of them. Now, then getting the attention of them and then trying to pitch a project is two different things. Pitching the project, especially in the creative world, tends to be very egocentric. So you're trying to pitch your idea and you're trying to, tell a story of why you think this idea is going to be good. And a lot of times you're not tying that to stuff that we would tie it to in the startup world, right? Which is like tangible metrics of like why there's market validation for whatever this idea is, right? A lot of it's going to be subjective, and that subjectivity is centered on your own ego, your own experience, and why you are passionately behind whatever this idea or story that needs to be told. Um, and point being is that at the end of the day, a lot of it boils down to like it's not even about the story, but you want to get the story heard. And so you're now seeking, and what I remember like going through was like trying to figure out like, okay, well, how do I actually get something made? And so like, how did I would have to then like, if I had to different projects, like I would have to figure out how to pitch it to different studios. So I started figuring out, okay, well, depending upon who I'm talking to or like what that studio just released this past year or where they found, the most commercial success with, I would have to position how I pitch that story. And it's the exact same story, same project across the board, but I would just try to position it differently or find some different value proposition around that that would be more, curated to that individual or that studio. Um, this is like, again, no overarching methodology, philosophy, or anything, no real guidance on this other than like I realized pretty quickly that when I was just going in guns blazing, just trying to say what I wanted to say, I wasn't getting the results I wanted to get. And ultimately, the only way I started getting results was when I started to actually pay attention to what the market was saying and remove my ego from the equation and then deliver what the market wanted. And ultimately, I got to what my childhood goal was, which was like, I wanted to make a movie and sell it to a studio. And so I ended up being able to do that, making a found footage horror movie and then like selling it to Lionsgate and probably being one of like the few percentage of like filmmakers that actually profited from making a film, right? That to me is like my first OG growth hack ever. Um, and that process taught me so much around just the art of storytelling and how storytelling is, and again, like whatever the product, whatever the service, whatever the widget is that you're trying to sell, right? It's how you position the story around it. And that ultimately helps you get to whatever the end goal is of what you're trying to accomplish, right? And a lot of the things I think you guys got to think about too is like whatever you are selling, whatever your product, your service, or whatever, right? Like we've talked about this in the very beginning, but like understanding the real reason for your why. Why are you selling this or why are you building this thing, right? And I think, a lot of the surface level answers, including myself, historically was like, well, I want to make a difference in the world, or, like I want to, uh, I want to help this industry escalate, blah, blah, blah. But if we really kind of like get to the root of it all, like really, what do you want? Right. And it's usually going to be tied to some potential, like, especially in this world, some financial outcome or some like vanity outcome, if we're really being honest with ourselves. And then we really need to look at like, well, what is that going to serve for us? Right. So for me, in that example of the producing and shooting of that movie, which again, I can answer more questions about that later, but like just the whole process of that was like, I just remember as a kid, my whole goal was like, I just really love movies and I love that idea of it. I wanted to always just make one and then see if I could sell it to a studio. So it really never really mattered the story. When I removed that from the equation, I just focused on the outcome of what I was trying to seek. It changed the way that I approached the game. And that's my point here is that whatever outcome you're trying to seek, it will change the way that you approach the game because hopefully it will remove the personal tie that you have to whatever your idea, your product, your business, your service, whatever that is. Because it's not about that personal tie. It's not about, how well you can explain it, how well you can build it, how well you can make it look shiny or polish it for whoever's going to use it, right? At the end of the day, it's got to be tied to a specific outcome, right? Now, the outcome could be, instead of just self-serving and like a financial outcome for you, it could be like a usage outcome, right? Like I want a user to be able to find so much value in this that they're going to use it every single day, right? That's totally fine too. But I think you guys got to really understand like what you want because that will change the way that you try to approach how to get to that outcome, if that makes sense for a lot of you guys. All right. So I'll stop there. I'm going to go to the next slide. Um, why traditional selling fails? I think a lot of us, again, you guys are, I know it's a mixed mash of like age groups, but I'm in my mid 40s. And so traditional selling to me always and I've done some of these kinds of jobs, but it reminds me of like used car salesman, right? Like I actually used to sell cold calling ADT alarms. And part of that process was like they would collect lead cards from the mall of people who dropped in their names from a raffle in the hopes of winning some kind of prize. Now they collected these, and then the way that we would cold call is like, hey, remember that when you filled out that form for that prize, you did win a prize. It's a security alarm system for a free installation, right? But you still have to pay for the monthly, so they're giving away the free installation. Now, that was like the whole when I realized, okay, like you got to break down the whole sales process into like these baby steps, right? So it's like you can look at it however you want to, but that's how they're collecting the lead cards, right? Then that's how they're positioning the lead cards for then getting in front of that audience. And that audience, then they're trying to position it as an opportunity for them to share with them, like, well, what are then potentially the values if we can make it super low friction for you to get this inside of your home, right? So similarly, you got to make it easy for the buyer to buy, right? And you got to make it so that because if you just look at these stats, right, this doesn't look crazy, but 84% of buyers distrust salespeople from the start. 70% of buying decisions are made before they even talk to somebody in sales, meaning they've done research online, they know what they're trying to look for. Usually it's coming down to like a pricing situation, or like if there's a must have. Again, I like to use the case of like if somebody has a broken leg and they need crutches, like if you're solving a specific pain and you're just like evaluating and then diagnosing and providing a solution to said pain versus pain creation, which is like much more difficult uphill battle where you have to help them actually identify the pain and then like create it for them. It's completely different versus that they're experiencing that broken leg and that it's fresh and that they are just hobbling around. And so you have the crutches for them and you could at that point dictate a certain fair pricing, right, compared to the market, but you can provide a solution that they need at that moment in time. So that's something to think about when you are trying to sell and I've used this kind of theme before, but just empathy, right? So like put yourself in the shoes of the recipient. How many times have people tried to sell to you? Evaluate, like even go through your inbox. And like I do this from time to time too. Like there's times where I'm more definitely like conscientious around it, but when I go through my phone every morning and I see all the fucking, I get hit up with like over 100 spam emails, right? But like I'm subconsciously now, because I'm pre-programmed to do it, I'm like looking for what am I clicking on that's then and I'm opening it. And I actually save those emails. And I don't care what's actually in it, but I'm looking at the subject line like why did I click it? Right? And I think just that habit is something that's good for anybody any level because you're always selling whether you're a product person or you're a founder or you are directly related to sales. You're always selling some version, whether it's selling yourself for a job, selling yourself to a customer, selling yourself to a partner or a co-founder. You're always kind of selling yourself. And I think it's good to kind of frame yourself in the mindset of like, all right, well, I'm the best use case. What have I responded to in the past? Why did that work on me? Right. And then trying to replicate a version of that. Next thing I would just kind of cover is like people don't want to be sold to, they want to be helped. Uh, Most powerful sales approach isn't about convincing, it's about connecting, right? When you focus on genuinely solving problems, sales becomes a natural byproduct of trust. And you've heard me probably talk about this again and again. A practical piece of advice. This is something I used to do all the time when, again, did a ton of like email outbound for different clients when I ran an agency. But like I I would always personalize anything that I was writing to a stranger by starting off with Dear Dad. Now, I don't remember where I got this idea from. It's probably from some sales book at some point, but I would have any of you guys do the same thing, right? And it could be like for me, that's like the most personal relationship. But any of you guys jot down whoever that person, somebody that's really personal to you, but like start off whatever you're gonna write to a stranger as like dear whoever. Even if it's a kid, if you have a kid, even better because you have to convince your kid to do certain things, and a lot of times they're going to be fighting you tooth and nail against it. That's also a good strategy to kind of use because when you start from there, it automatically starts to implant the idea of empathy, right? It's like now all of a sudden it's become personal. And when you think about this is again something that maybe you guys should do just on your off time, but like if you start analyzing again some of the things that you've responded to, you're going to start probably seeing like, well, it connected to something that had nothing to do with whatever that body of the email was, or like whatever they're trying to actually sell. There's something else that kind of triggered you, and it's probably something more personal, more emotional, right? It hit on something that wasn't what you would consider typically the traditional like sales methodology or like business sales practice. And I think that's something to, again, just as a tangible takeaway, to start practicing. Whatever ads you guys are creating, whatever landing pages you're generating, you want to always be able to talk to people as if they're people. You don't want to talk to a potential customer as like a customer, right? You want to just be able to be able to walk into a room. You want to be the guy that that your customer will want to have a beer with. You know what I mean? And so like that's that, when you get into that mindset of like that dear, again, whoever that person is, it starts really helping you, I think, just connect, connect to whoever it is that you're trying to talk to. And I'll add this into here, but like for me, it's so, you know, whatever you guys are creating in terms of collateral, always think about it from that perspective. 4 pillars of selling, and this is the exact same way I would like have you guys run your sales demos, right? So the moment you have a meeting with somebody, and I'll provide more, but like listen first, right? So understand before being understood. I think a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this too in the very beginning, but like a lot of times when you got somebody on a call, you're so concerned about the time limit, and you're just trying to squeeze in as much as you possibly can because you think your shit is so cool. And so you just want to rattle off every bell and whistle and feature and function that you can do. Uh, and you do so before really understanding, okay, or even diagnosing any problem or any pain point, right? The best are listening first and know which questions to ask. And this is again stuff that I mentioned last week, but I'll add some of these things into here, right? Which is, so to listen first is like, I'm trying to think through, and I mean, I'll share some of the demos that I've ran through that I've done personally, with customers, but like, usually I'll just start with some small talk, just kind of like understanding where the person's from, what their background is. So it's like, oh, I noticed that you used to work here, but you recently started doing this. Like, how's that transition been? Right. So it's something that is engaging with them. Again, appeal to their ego because everybody has it. And so if you can get them to start talking about themselves, it's going to lower down their walls just a little bit, which is going to be good for you. So I think like doing some, I'll just put it to here, but like, just doing some like light personal background intelligence, and then asking questions about it. Um, I think then, you can then jump right into, okay, like, hey, all right, great. Thanks. Thanks for connecting and give me 5 minutes. Right. So then it's like, showing appreciation. And then I would say, thanks for giving me 5 minutes. All right, I'm going to keep this short, right? So then setting expectations. And again, I say I'm going to keep this short because it shows like I'm being respectful of their time. And keep this short. I'm not going to need more like than 10 minutes. I know most likely it's going to go 30 minutes if I do it right. Okay. And I'll share with you how I get what doing it right means. But like I say, I'm going to keep it short. I'll keep it at 10 minutes. Want to be respectful of your time. And then I jump into asking questions. But these again are leading questions, right? So these are questions I typically know the answers to, right? So this is going to be like, so for Leader Pro example, we're like the B2B software marketplace, and I'm talking to a potential vendor that's going to list on our platform, right? And be like, okay, like I want to just understand kind of like who your target ICP is, because I want to make sure it makes sense for you, and it's a good fit for our platform, right? Because we have density around a certain type of buyer personas, but we don't have everything under the sun. So can you tell me a little bit about who your target ICP is, right? So I most likely already know who their target ICP, like I know who their customers are, but if we have a match of who their target customers are with the kind of users we have on our platform, then it's a no-brainer, right? Because then I'm like, oh, okay, well then, yeah, we have a few thousand of those. We can start matching you pretty. So the whole point of the game is for me to ask a leading question that I already know the answer to. So in my case, just it's gonna be, um, and I also make it feel more exclusive, right? So it's like I just want to make sure I'm doing you a solid. So like I don't want to waste your time. Let's make this easy. You tell me who's your target ICP. So exclusive, uh, and then for me, it's like asking who their target ICP is. And once I know what that is, then I could be like, oh, okay, so it's a no-brainer. I make it easy for the buyer. It's free to set up profile. And then I start naming off like all the why it's so low friction. And at that point, it's like we got our foot through the door and we have to deliver on us, and we know we can deliver if again we have their target ICP, but then we have to deliver on some baby milestones. And if we can deliver on that, we know then that we can get them to pay for something within 3 days. And so we have this flow now of like how easy it is. And a lot of times they'll sometimes like ask questions. Then this is where like it's like the education part. So it's like at this point, once I know that we have the match, we've qualified them. Education part is like I will ask them, okay, like we have a dashboard. I can give you like I can show you and run through it with you real quick. It's probably only going to take 5 minutes. This is now I know that's qualified. They know that this is a good match. And now I'm educating about the product, right? So at this point, I'm going to be like, this is what I would like offer to demo. And I wouldn't even actually demo. I'm like, it's pretty intuitive. It's pretty easy. You just got to set up a company profile page. You got to do X, Y, and Z. Like, but I'm happy to show you, right? If you got like 5 minutes, I can do it. So again, you're making it super easy for them. You're leading them. Um, and you're saying like, okay, offer a demo. Uh, again, you're making it feel like you're going out of the way for them. And so like by doing that, you know, they feel like, okay, this person's respecting my time. Like yeah, now I am curious. You're just basically trying to generate some level of FOMO, right? And like I shit you not, probably like 70% of the time, they're just like, yeah, show me the demo, right? And that's when I'll go through the 5 minute pitch of the demo. And because this continues to build trust, right? So I go through the 5 minute pitch, and then I'm like, and then I'll rattle off. At this point, I'll rattle off a few features, right? This is where it's like you can add teammates, you can refine your ICP, you can generate your qualification question, you can do all these things, right? But I'm not going to run through all these things, right? It's just going to take up too much time. But if you care for them, I can walk you through what that looks like. Or if you want to do like a subscription and unlock some of these things, but you don't really need to do those things right now. Like you can literally just go off. I have someone from our customer success team reach out to you, share with you the instructions. They could walk you through it, blah, blah, blah. 50% of the time, they'll just be like, okay, cool. The other 50% of the time, they're just like, no, okay, like we want to do it. How can we do this? And at this point, if I know that 50%, if they're committed and they're on the hook, what I'll do is be like, all right, cool. You mind if we just go ahead and create the account for you? And so we make it super easy for the buyer. So we have somebody on our CS team that actually it really takes them like 30 seconds, but like we can literally generate an account for our vendors in 30 seconds. But we send it to them an hour later, but they get it the same day. And it's their profile page all set up. We give them temporary login credentials, and then they can go edit it, tweak it, whatever. And from there, we get about an 80% conversion into some kind of subscription or into a purchase. So it's going through these different layers that I just kind of named off for you that you're gonna have to figure out what that is for for your product or your service, but you have to just make it super simple, and it has to be, answering to a pain that you know that exists. Now, if you don't know the pain exists, right? And you have to go through the uphill battle of like pain creation, right? Meaning like you're going to have to ask a series of questions to even understand if they do have this problem, then it's going to be a little bit different, right? In those cases, it's still this, it's still listen first, it's still educate, it's still build trust and add value. But the way that you're going to have to do it is it's it's just going to be the step before selling, right? So you're not going to really probably be able to sell in that initial call. I would leverage at that point more of like a discovery. I would label a discovery call. And so you're not going to be able to close as quickly. It's going to be an added layer just because you have to create the pain for them first. You have to connect that pain dot for them, right? Um, or again, like if it's not something that the toughest uphill battles are typically also it's like when they don't necessarily have budget already allocated towards whatever your solution is. You know what I mean? Where it's like you don't know where they're typically going to be pulling budget from. It's a lot easier when you know, like, oh yeah, sales and marketing typically has 500K to spend per quarter, right? At this type of size company. Now, if you don't know if they have that access to that, it's a completely different story, and you're going to have to like make an argument for them to be able to get that budget. And again, that's where it's going to be like depends on who you're talking to, but if you're talking to the end user, it's going to have to be like a time savings kind of like ROI. And if it's somebody that's more of like a decision maker, like a CFO, now a lot of days like enterprise deals require the CFO sign off. That's going to have to be like a direct like, you know, impact on margins or top line revenue ROI, right? So it's going to have to be a financial ROI. So those are just kind of things to keep in mind. Um, and then again, this the add value is just like any questions on that stuff so far? Let me see if Chris, anything on that?
Yeah, I guess my question is, I know you're talking about your trust. I guess the building trust is just more of just like repetition and getting your reps in to talk to more customers. So I feel like this is really good information. And then like the second thing I was gonna ask was like role play. I don't know if we can do that maybe in like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks from now, but it'd be cool to just get toasted by you. Be like, hey, can I pitch you, Chris, and see if you're able to squeeze by, and then getting feedback from you directly would be ideal.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely down for that. So let me add that into here. Okay. Anything else?
Looks good, thank you.
Cool. All right. So continuing on, a lot of this might be redundant, but again, none of this stuff that I'm sharing with you is like rocket science. I think a lot of you guys probably, seen a lot of this stuff. It's just kind of putting it into practice. So again, to like in Chris's point, it might be good to kind of like have you guys just have at it and then give us your best pitch. Yeah, and try to put these into practice. But some things to think about, story over statistics. People definitely like stories more than they think about numbers. Unless maybe it's a CFO, but again, like you need to figure out what's going to work for what audience, right? CFO makes sense because their profession and their life is a lot centered around numbers. So the story is gonna have to center somewhat around numbers. But now if you're talking to somebody in HR and that's your decision maker, completely different set of parameters, right? Like it's a different mindset. Also, if you're talking to somebody in engineering, it's different than somebody in accounting, versus if you're talking to a salesperson. So just keep that in mind. Know who your audience is. It's going to be different in terms of like how you want to position your story. Um, Ask, don't tell. Again, this is something I've preached to you guys over and over again. Always ask the customer at every stage of what you guys are doing. Ask and talk to the customer. don't dictate, don't let your ego do the driving. Like make sure that you are building something that you know is going to create value for whoever the end user is. And the only way to know with any certainty is that you you got an answer from somebody or somebody told you, I would use this if this existed. You know what I mean? And so that's the best litmus test is to go down a path based on what somebody has indicated that they would be like willing to pay you money for. Be the resource. This is again goes to the trust part, right? But like offer helpful content, even if it doesn't lead to a sale. That's what that Substack article was about, right? So it's I think um, sharing, you know, and that it's still like I would say that's still the article is like 30% for sure self-serving, but 70% is just kind of like sharing the story of how the attention economy is shifting. And it's a very real thing because I'm noticing it shifting. And it's something that I've had this thesis 10 plus years ago that it's going to shift. That it's like, why are we paying for ads when we are just kind of guessing at how to manipulate for that attention versus going ahead and just asking for that attention directly, right? And I think like that's something that I've always just thought made logical sense, and we're starting to see a shift of that more happening now. I know that there's been historically conflict of interest within organizations but it's like as we've been kind of removed from just the traditional workplace environment and the traditional like workplace, you know, uh, rules and the games are shifted. I mean, tech has done a lot of just kind of like shifting what's rules and what's arbitrary rules, and so there's it's pretty much more open ended at this point. Um, but yeah, be the resource, be somebody that is sharing thought leadership, right? I mean, that's why you guys are here, so it's again, be somebody that um is and everybody can be I guarantee you everybody's like an expert in something. You just got to figure out what that is and you got to be not afraid to share it. Uh, so I think that's again, figure out what that is for you. Social proof is this is just like letting the people along the way that you've worked with, whether they're company specific people, references, employers, uh, you know, letting them be able to vouch for you, right? And that's where customer logos help on websites. This is where testimonials help. This is where introductions and referrals and partnerships help. But social proof, even, and I think again, I probably mentioned this before, but like social proof can be a Wall Street Journal article talking about why your specific solution in this particular industry is actually very relevant in 2026, right? Or a McKinsey article um, using a CNN, whatever, but like using a reputable name to then help you tell the narrative or tell the story of what it is that you're trying to sell and why it's relevant to whoever it is that you're trying to sell it to, right? That can also be social proof, especially if you don't have any brand recognition, right? But it's like McKinsey recently said in fourth quarter of last year that 2026, this is going to be the thing that shapes this industry. Now, what are you doing to get ahead of this, right? So it's all about how you try to look at the different degrees of separation. Obviously, the most closest in that circle is going to be like a direct referral, right? That's going to get you the most highest converting conversations, right? As most of you guys have already seen from just going through the exercises. And then, if the further out you go, the layers of that trusted bubble of social proof, like referencing a Wall Street Journal article, that's gonna be lower converting, but it's better than just trying to pitch cold. Okay. So I think another thing to keep in mind. The give framework, best salespeople make it feel easy, right? They make it feel like they are altruistically helping you problem solve something. I've mentioned this again before. Gather, learn challenges and goals, inform, share relevant insights, validate, confirm understanding, and fit, empower, help them make the best decision, right? So the best salespeople are able to do this without leading them to their own specific solution or product, but they're asking the right questions that it allows the buyer to get there on their own. And majority of the time, the only reason why they're buying from that person specifically is because they trust that individual more than they trust the product itself, right? And I think that's something, again, this is going to be hard for some product people, but like it's you've experienced it too. You've used shitty software. Everybody here has probably used shitty software for some at some point in their lives, right? And it's probably experienced or known of a better solution. Now, why the hell are you guys using this shittier version? And it's because somebody in your organization had a better relationship with that whoever is the person who sold them on that thing. So I know this to be true for $1 million deals that end up never being used within an organization at a Fortune 500 company, and had nothing to do with anything other than that was a great salesperson and the person bought into it, and there really wasn't a need, or the adoption methodology sucked and the onboarding implementation was horrible. So just kind of keep that in mind. So practical tips is, dude, learn how to just learn how to conversate about your product. Don't have these rehearsed scripts and pitches. It doesn't work well. It can work well if you can role play and you know how, put in some acting chops and like learn how to do the natural pauses and the ums and the ahs, the thought bubbles going on, right? Like, but when you spit stuff out like a well-rehearsed script, you lose people because all of a sudden your brain is now focused on what you're trying to say versus what the person versus listening to the person and what they're actually dealing with. Play the long game. Again, this is something that's counterintuitive, but the more you're willing to play the long game, the shorter your sales cycles tend to be because the trust is such a big factor in it. If it's easier or faster to trust you, the more likely, they're going to be able to move mountains for you within the organization to close the deal faster. Content is currency. Again, if you can share with people different things, that's going to help them be better at their jobs, without it having be directly related to yours, even better. Uh, Everybody should look at Gong.io's blog page. Gong.io is a sales tool, and they do a really good job with their blog pages and the way that they gate it. Look at that like a science homework, like science assignment, because the way that they've done it is they've done shit ton of split testing, but like they've done a really good job of actually taking their product, funneling the learnings from their product to then share with those statistics to a larger audience, and then making recommendations around how to sell better, based on real data, right, that they've captured internally. So they're sharing with you the advantages of their product without having directly sell you on their product, right? And there, a lot of salespeople and marketing people will go to their blog site specifically just for best practices, specifically just to get tips and ideas, and not even being a customer of theirs. But when you're ready to spend or you have the budget to spend, it's already marked inside your brain that that's the place to go. Follow up with value. So this is, again, each of you guys should always be doing some kind of a newsletter, Substack, whatever. Beehive, always have some kind of newsletter. Keep engaged with your target customers, even if they're not customers yet. This, again, like if you've built out a few 100,000 in a database, you should be sending something out to them at least once a month, right? Uh, you need to be able to provide some kind of value. So by the time that they are ready to buy, that they already have some kind of name recognition. Remember, in best cases, it's like 5% of your total available market is actually ever in a buying pattern, right? Is actually ever sitting there with a broken leg ready to buy crutches, right? If you're selling crutches and that's your core business, think about that perspective. It's so true, but it's like in most cases, it's actually 3%. Last thing, again, is just the best salespeople don't sell. They solve problems, build relationships, create value. Sales is just a byproduct of having a great conversation. All right, I'll stop there. I'm gonna take questions and we'll go through this. Gong.io, yeah, and I'll show you guys real quick what I mean. So you go to the resources section. You can go to see like this is a good example. Best sales insights of 2025. This is like taken from their product. And then they'll share with you a bunch of stuff here. And then they usually will have these little bunch of like other like paywall or gate kept content that's within content. So they do a bunch of these kinds of things. But if you just go through their, and they have these guides do really well. So these are cheat sheets for best practices for neural retention, sales playbook best practices. I suggest reading through these. It's always worth it to just kind of get another set of eyes. Um, and just get ideas. But they have some really good tips and tricks in there. Again, I think like more than anything, it's really helpful is to just start getting into the framework and mindset of like, why did some of these things work? Because just remember that things will work only long enough until everybody starts doing it. And then once everybody starts doing it, by that time, or like right before everybody starts doing it, it stops working because everybody started doing it and then everybody starts catching on to it. And nobody likes to be sold to. And so it stops working. So just keep that in mind. But like the way that the framework of what I share with you guys of like how to think about it, that give mentality, that will always work. It's just how you, whatever phrasing you're plugging in, or the way that you tell that narrative around your product or service or what you decide to highlight, that's gonna change, but that ideology will work well. So how do you go from custom demo to paid customer in a month? I'm 50% there building a new feature for prospects. They really like the first half of what I shipped. We meet this Friday for the second half where I ship now or replaces what they use today. Okay, so this is gonna be like Gatos.
Yeah, Kathleen.
Hey Kathleen. All right. Yeah, if you can you talk a little bit more about it and then I can give you my 2 cents.
Okay, yeah. So my software is billing with AI, just AI enabled billing, really simplifies billing. And so the product that they use today is called Maxio. So I've already, I met this customer through I think just randomly sending DMs, and then they finally responded saying they wanted to meet. So there were two main things that they want fixed for them because I approached the conversation from like, how can I be useful, right? Number one is automated monthly billing, different tiers, different amounts. And the second part is translating spreadsheet data into billable items for their customers. So that's what I'm working on now. And so basically, when we spoke, we agreed that like they will use the product, they will pay for the product when this customer has been onboarded. So there's two parts, right? There's that first part, which is the monthly billing, and then the second part, which is the spreadsheet itemization building. So on Friday, I already built out the monthly billing and everything, and they said this is great. This basically replaces Maxio, and they charge more than you. And I'm like, awesome. So we're meeting this Friday to go over the spreadsheet billing automation. And so at that point, it's like, okay, once I show them, I know it's going to work. What is the funnel for them to get to the pay? Because the other customers I've had, they're usually like, okay, I'm ready to pay you. I'm excited. I'm hoping that this customer is the same, but you never know. So, yeah. So it's what advice do you have for that?
Yeah. So usually you would have had a contract in place before they start using the product. And that contract would stipulate the payment terms, right? Um, and if you don't have that, that's something that would put into place as soon as possible. But like, right, it's like, and is this, you could have a pilot contract, um, you or you can just have like a contract that's, like an annual contract and that kicks in, I don't know. This is where you can be creative with whatever you want the terms to be, but it's like if like again, if they're already using it and it's already replacing something, right? You should already be like, okay, before Friday, I would already send them like a payment contract, right, with like an invoice attached to it. Do they have any? This is gonna be trickier because like, do they have any expectations of what you're going to charge, or when?
So yeah, they know what I'm going to charge. Yeah, they know. So they haven't started using it yet. I've just onboarded one their customer. I think they have like 30 customers that they need in the platform. And so we're just doing on a piecemeal basis, like start with one customer, get complete coverage in the billing, and then roll out the other customers. So maybe
So how much is
maybe
it per How much do you charge per customer, or are you charging like what is your pricing model?
yep, it's a $600 flat fee for just billing alone
And
monthly.
that's for it's what that doesn't matter whether it's one or 30.
Yep, for now. Once I did say like once we get to the point where it's like past like 50 customers, then we'll reevaluate based on the size of their data. So,
But
but
is that
it
in
looks
any contract?
what?
Is that in any legally binding paperwork?
I haven't sent the contract yet. No.
Okay. I would definitely get a contract out before Friday,
Okay.
right? So you
Yeah.
got you can you have a talking point about that on Friday. And it
Okay.
doesn't like you just and this goes for everybody, but like I find this a lot of the times where it's like all of a sudden somebody's using the product, but they haven't paid for like 90 days.
Oh
And
no.
then you try to ask for the money and then they never pay you and then they just stop using the product. Right. And so
Yeah.
it's like you need to be able, and a lot of times is because either whoever you got to agree to use it is not the right person to sign off on the budget, or like they just it's not sticky enough of a product for them to keep using it. But
Yeah.
you need to be able to set the expectations
Yeah.
before again, like you're spending a resources to onboard them. You know what I mean? Like if it's a self-serving product or it's a PLG motion where you can get somebody in and they can self-service themselves to a certain point, and then at that point you can evaluate usage to identify if it's somebody that is a land and expand, or you can upsell them something else. That's typically how I would leverage like that like that kind of a model if you have like a freemium model. Or but again, like if you're having to onboard them physically, or you have to go through some kind of motion where you have to allocate your own time, there needs to be like implementation fee, or you need to be able to set kind of some kind of like billing terms that justifies that time.
Okay. Yeah. I think I don't know. I think it's because of just I'm not good at this, but I think just I'm just really focused on trying to get my first 10 customers. So I haven't been charging an implementation fee. I've only been, trying to get them on the monthly $600 per month as soon as possible. So yeah, which is fine. I would love to charge an implementation fee. I think I need to start, quantifying that and at least go in on Friday and be like, okay, so by the way, this is the implementation. Get all your customers onboarded, which normally costs X amount. But if you, sign up, I know you have your meeting with your co-founders next week. Uh, this will be waived. I don't know, something like that. So it's
No,
like,
that's totally fine, but that's the point of having that conversation about an implementation fee,
yeah,
right? Like you definitely don't want to undersell yourself. This is again for everybody. Don't undersell yourself because then you don't have any room to discount. You don't have
yeah,
any room to show favors, right? Like if you're
right,
stretched so thin just trying to serve 10 customers, right? Like
yeah,
you don't have a scalable like process. So like you know that you're gonna have to charge something in order for because like you're not gonna be able to service 100 customers when you get there, right? So you're gonna need to hire somebody to help do this, and that person's gonna
yes,
cost you money. right? And so you're going to need to then charge something. And now, if you haven't built a process for that into it sooner than later, it's going to be nobody wants to like at some later point be like told, oh, now it's this price versus, you know what I mean? So it's like set those expectations earlier on.
Yeah.
And I think I just again, it's like you could go into it now even when you send out the contract, but I would like send out the contract and be like, you know, normally there's by the way, normally there's implementation fee. I waive that out of, you know, courtesy to you guys. But you know, this invoice has the terms of the payment, and if everything works well on Friday, we can discuss kind of like, you know, what the what whatever that the terms might be.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep. Yep, Sarah.
Uh, Hi, Chris. Thank you for this. Just in regards to what you were saying, the pitching and authentically sort of really relaying the story, I feel like coming from a TVN background really helped me. I get really comfortable with pitching and vision onboarding creators early. I feel like that part's working. Where I feel tension is retention, while because I kind of feel like because the platform is sort of ever evolving and the product is at this point um super complete, but still in the sort of promise stage. I feel like I don't know how to set up expectations when I'm having people on board, because one of the things I'm asking them is to give us feedback and testing before getting to monetization and really making them feel like this is not just an experimental sort of project, and also not making them feel like experimental subjects. I guess I wonder, when I get onto these meetings, how do I engage? How do I essentially keep
Okay.
them engaged
I'm
long
gonna
enough to reach
I'm gonna stop you
monetization?
there by being
Uh-huh.
honest with them.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is like you said, you don't want them to feel like it's an experimental project, but it is an experimental project,
Hmm.
right? Like they are part of the experiment. Now that can be a weakness or it can be a strength depending upon how you position it.
And should I make promises as to what they will be as like the first early onboarders and like cohorts of this whole project? And do I have to kind of think
Promises
about that?
promises are setting expectations into concrete. And if you don't
Mm-hmm.
deliver promises, right, people get pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
If you can share hopes, right, which is
Mm-hmm.
hopes and aspirations, which is expectations that are not as tangible, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's that's something that they won't, you know, they won't kill you for, right? So it's like I think you need to
I
just
see.
be careful with like how like think again from your perspective, right? You know,
Right.
I've always hated when somebody overpromised, underdelivered to me. Like
Yeah,
I hate
100.
that's my pet peeve. And if you
Mm,
overpromise, then I'm like, I'm in there and this I'm never gonna use you again. Like, and so I to me it's like if you tell me point blank, like we don't know what the fuck we're doing, but this
right.
is the reason why we're doing it, and we're super passionate about this. And we're looking for a few people that are like really passionate about what they're doing and are willing to be along for the ride. And this is what I can promise you today. This is why I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you we're trying to get to in the future. But if you know, and this is how we're hoping to leverage your expertise in
I
that
see.
journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
if it ever gets too much for you, or you're just like, fuck this, it's like wasting my time, just let me know.
Mm,
Just shoot me a text. Here's my number. Just shoot me a text message and be like, hey, I don't think I have the time for this anymore. Cool. I can super respect that, right? And I'm also can be super respectful if like I'm asking you too many questions. But this is what we're trying to do, and this is why we're doing it. Is this something that you're passionate about? And if you can
I
get that,
see.
you know what I'm saying? Like, because it's gonna help you get ahead of that retention problem because you're
Mm,
only gonna be then onboarding the ones that are passionate about it, that are willing
yeah.
to experiment and give you the feedback. They're gonna be your power users when it's fully ready. But if you're
Right.
onboarding a bunch of people that you're over promising these sets of expectations, but you can't get them there, that's when you're gonna have a retention problem.
I see. And so, on that note, do you recommend that I prioritize delivering an exceptional sort of guided monetization experience for a small cohort and really focus on them, or focus on onboarding more
Deliver
users because we're
exceptional
also in the
whatever you
VCs?
de-
Go
deliver
ahead.
whatever you can exceptionally deliver on. That's the lowest hanging fruit for you to deliver and overly fulfill that promise. Does that make sense? So don't
Yeah.
promise something that you have to still build, still test, and you know, and then say that that's going to be ready. Don't do that. But like, even if you just be like, I'm going to over deliver on communicating with you. Like, I'm going
Mm.
to over deliver on listening to your
Oh, I like that.
frustrations, right? I'm going to over
Right.
deliver on just being accessible to you as part of this process. Like that, anybody can do. Any of you guys
Yeah,
can do
I
this
really
stuff,
like that.
right? But like,
Hmm.
you moment you say like, yeah, I can deliver blah blah blah, like, and you don't, it just falls flat, and there's no point in doing that.
That's great because I feel like they really see the vision and they can almost like I'd say 80% of the time they've told me that they can see themselves using it every day and to monetize through it. But I think what you're saying is like small sort of promises that are really deliverable on my end that sets me apart from other people who are going to probably deliver the same thing and maybe better
Correct.
to them in terms of features and the product itself. And
Correct.
so, and do you think, just final question, in terms of validating for VCs, the initial thought process for me was to get as many people. But from what I'm hearing from you, a small cohort that can essentially get a great experience could be a better
Yeah.
sort of
Yes.
feedback for
Listen
me
to
to
Air
take to.
like,
Mhm.
yeah, Airbnb's was it Scott something, or no, I forgot his name.
I know
He
who you're
said,
talking about, I think.
yeah, but
Yeah,
he said that you want to get 100 people that love your product, right?
I see. Hmm. Hmm.
Not 1,000 people that like it.
I got you. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. That
Cool.
was really good.
All right, Jason. Hey, you're muted.
Trying to be good and keep it quiet in the background. But let me start
Okay.
over. The any tools or platforms you're aware of that can help with that practice and feedback?
What do you mean? Practice and feedback.
Well, the ask earlier was, hey, I want to go through different scripts and get very specific feedback on practicing my sales, how to iterate there. Are you aware of any, like Udly, for example, one I know Google uses for sales training, but I don't know if they do some of the custom feedback that would be requested here.
I mean, there's definitely like a few.
Hmm.
I'll share. There's a few. I'll share with. I can't remember the list off the top of my head, but I'll dig them up and I'll send you guys in the WhatsApp group a couple of them that I've either used or directly heard about, with positive feedback. There's a lot also that's just crap out there.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'll definitely share some. And I do think, to Chris's point, I will, um, not next week, but maybe the following week, open it up and then have you guys, whoever's willing to, I'll have you guys like sign up for uh your own, like a sales pitch, for like 5-10 minutes, and whoever wants to do it, we can take like 6 to 10 people.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Selfishly, what I'm building is tangential to this type of practice. It's not my
Yeah,
current focus, but I'll tear through that and maybe open up for some free testing accounts for people and hear if I could solve it. But I got to
okay,
maintain what I'm building elsewhere. But I appreciate that context and help.
for sure. Cool. All right. Anybody have anything else before next week we'll go through milestones again. And then the following week, I think, yeah, I'll give you guys the opportunity to kind of like pitch, and I'll just kind of go through and give you my notes. Anybody else can also give their notes, but yeah, we'll do kind of like a quick pitch round, and it won't, yeah, we'll go from there. Well, I'm curious to see how you guys do it. I'll give you some tips and tricks. I'll also just send out the re-edited, slides that I just did for you, with you guys. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for this week. Cool. Good deal. Hopefully
Thanks
this
as
is cool
always.
again. Yep.
Thanks,
I will
Chris.
talk to you
Yeah,
guys. Yep.
Chris.
Yes. Bye.
Thanks,